Are you looking for an Android device that can play PS2 games, GameCube games, and the entire library of games that are coming out and available right now? Well, you're in luck because I've tried many, and here are my top 5. Now, Android is everyone's favorite phone operating system based on the numbers around the globe, but since there are so many good games, emulation support, and streaming services out there, there have been a ton of different manufacturers making Android-based handheld systems, which are meant for just gaming and not phone calls or emails. And there's a lot of them in many different price categories. So let's dive into my top 5. This is the Anbernic RG556. It is $185 from Anbernic's website. Quick jiffy of this is it is a 5.48-inch AMOLED screen, and it's 1920 by 1080 by 60 Hz. It's running Android 13, has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it has a 5,500 milliamp hour battery for around 8 hours of gaming, and it charges at 5 volts, 2 amps. The battery management on the Anbernic RG556 is pretty bad. When you keep it on lock, it will drain over time, no matter if you have anything running or not. So this is a device you'll want to power down every time. The ergonomics of this device are very good. The screen size to hand ratio, including with all these bumps, which are like little controller bumps, they're fantastic. I think this device feels very good, and the speakers fire the correct way. So they fire into your palms of your hands so you can actually hear it. It has Switch-style joysticks, but little thumb caps will fit over top of these, and it's okay to play with joystick-wise. They're kind of small, they're Switch-style. And the emulation power for this device, it can play all the way up to the PS2 era of devices, but it will not play all of the PS2 library. So for that, I would recommend playing up to the GameCube and PS2, but not the full library. This will play everything and below very easily. In addition to Android gaming, the Android gaming on this device is fantastic. This device does come with a screen mapping tool, so in case you're playing Genshin Impact or Diablo Immortal, you can map the screen to the buttons and it's no big deal. I did not include any device that doesn't have this off the bat. I think this is necessary for all Android devices. I think this device is good for the price point and is the lowest cost option, coming in at $185 with no shipping included. You can also get this from litnxt.com. Down in the description, if you'd like to, they figured out the shipping on their end and have a much better service. And for the Anbernic RG556, it does come with an emulation front end, meaning you load in, press the button, and it'll bring you to games that are already loaded for a cheap price. That's definitely what I recommend. So for the cheap cost, nice screen, great ergonomics, I think the Anbernic RG556 is the best starter handheld of this group. This is the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. This device is very interesting because it's very small, has a very nice screen, and has fantastic joysticks and trigger buttons. So let's dive in. This device has a 4.7-inch 750 by 1334 screen at 60 FPS. It's got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. The battery management on the Retroids are specifically bad. So if you are going to play and then put it down for a long time, you're going to want to turn it off because it is definitely going to drain the battery relatively quickly, even if you're not playing anything. And the ergonomics on this device are a little bit lacking. I think the device's overall feel is fine, but if you have larger hands or want a less pocketable device, I don't think this is what you're looking for. This is definitely the most pocketable device of the bunch. It has no ergonomic grips, but it does have little bumps for the L2 and R2 trigger. Now, the sticks on this, though, are very fantastic. They have the nice thumbsticks. They're full-size thumbsticks, or a little bit under full size, but they're larger than the Switch joysticks, which for me at least makes it a little bit better ergonomically. This device comes in a bunch of different colors and also comes with Anbernic's front end built in, meaning they have a game library that when you start up the device initially, you can pick which emulators you want to download them, then add your own ROMs, which is very nice. Which, in addition to this emulation front end, they also have a screen overlay, a mapping overlay for the buttons. If you have a game that doesn't want to run correctly, you can actually map the buttons to on-screen touches, and it makes a world of difference for games like Diablo Immortal, because it doesn't have controller support built in. Now, the difference difference between the two SKUs from the Retroid Pocket 4 and 4 Pro are a difference of 4 gigs of RAM. So 8 gigs I think is plenty for what you'll need on this device. Game streaming is fantastic, in addition to all of the emulation, all the way up to the PSP and GameCube emulators. This will not run the full PS2 library completely, but it does run some PS2 games. So if you're looking for the cheapest out of the bunch, the Retroid Pocket 4 base at $150 is a pretty good option for a streaming device or a starter handheld as well. The one con I have about this device is it's a not completely normal aspect ratio, like a 1920 by 1080 ratio, but the screen looks fantastic, and most games I didn't have any issues with scaling to that resolution. So all in all, the Retroid Pocket 4 is a recommended device, but for people who want to do game streaming and have a pocketable device, this is around the size of a Nintendo Switch Lite, a little bit smaller, so it's definitely pocketable. The Ayaneo Pocket Air. This is a $300 AMOLED device that only comes in one color, this ugly white and red theme, and I originally didn't do a review on this because the software suite was not fully flushed out yet, and it was a bummer because I actually really liked the looks and emulation of this device, and now at this point in time I actually really like where this device has gone, so I recommend it now. But here are the specs of this device. So it has a 5.5 inch 1080p AMOLED screen, it has a 7350 milliamp hour battery, Hall sensing joysticks and triggers, and a dedicated ISpace button. So when you click that button, it brings you into an overlay that can change all of your different specs on how the device is running and a bunch of different options, similar to how the Steam Deck works, in addition to now having a mapping software. So being able to play games like Diablo Immortal, Genshin Impact that don't have controller support, this device can now do that. Beforehand, if you tried to play Pokemon Unite, you would just sit there and have to use the touchscreen. It's kind of the whole point of the device is to use the controls that are built in. They have now since fixed that, and I now think this device is a very highly recommended device. It is more expensive though. The 6 gig version with 128 gigs of RAM is $300. The one we have here is the 6 gig version with 128 gigs of storage at $300, an 8 gig version with 256 gigs of storage for $379, and the 12 gig version with 512 gigs of storage for $459. Now, for this device specifically, how small it is, the 5.5 inch screen, and how small the device is, I actually like this device as an ultra portable high-end device. So for this size screen and specs and ergonomics, I really do think this is a great device, but at that $299 price point, not any higher. Anything higher and you might as well get something else. Now, for the ergonomics on this device are actually fantastic. Even though it has smaller joysticks, I put some joystick grips on the top of those, in addition to having little slits, kind of like the Switch Lite has, to fire the sound at you versus into your palms. The battery on the Ayaneo Pocket Air is larger, in addition to being very well managed. So when you turn this off, the sleep mode won't drain the battery just instantly. It's okay to leave it on for a while. For this device being a little bit smaller in this category, I actually enjoy this device for streaming. This will play up to almost exactly how the Retroid Pocket 4 works. So it'll play up to the PS2 collection, but will not play all of the PS2 collection. It, however, is good at GameCube, PSP, game streaming, and tons of Android games. This is a fantastic device for playing Android games, keeping connected, and having tons of fun. The 1920 by 1080 resolution is a fantastic choice for this 5.5 inch screen because it looks very sharp. In addition to it being AMOLED, it's just a fantastic screen in such a small package. I really think they knocked it out of the park with a premium feel and a small form factor. Now moving on to a different brand that doesn't really get into the handheld gaming space, but is in this point and should be talked about because you can get this device for cheaper than is listed on their website, and I think if you do, it's worth it if you're using it for this specific thing. What I'm talking about is the Logitech branded G Cloud device, also known as the Logitech G Cloud, or I just like to call it the Logitech Cloud because I think that's the name, and it's like Logitech's one brand, G is their gaming brand, and then Cloud is the name of the device. I don't know how they screwed up this naming. This is the Logitech Cloud. For $300, you get a 7-inch 1920 by 1080, 16 by 9 aspect ratio IPS LCD. It's at 60 Hz, has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and has a 6000 milliamp hour battery. This has analog joysticks and analog triggers, or Hall effect. And the colors on this device are white and oddly yellow. The color options are awful. The device itself is fantastic, and what I recommend for this one is, you guessed it, game streaming. So if you're looking for a device that is just specifically for game streaming, this 7-inch screen size and the battery management on this device is fantastic. Now for ergonomics, this thing is fantastic. It has some bumps on the side so you can grip onto it really well, in addition to having larger stick sizes. So this thing feels fantastic and feels almost like a Steam Deck and is closer to the size of one than the other devices mentioned. But this main option for this device is just streaming. It can emulate things. This is just an Android device, and you can install any Android apps you want, in addition to Android games on this device. It does come with its own overlay, so when you start it up, you kind of have a bar selection like Xbox would look like, and Xbox even sells this on their website, dubbing it their portable game console, which this, for Xbox Game Pass, works incredibly well. In its emulation power, though, is a little bit lacking. This can pretty much only play up to the PSP comfortably. Past anything like that, you're not going to want to really emulate anything else. So if you're looking just to emulate maybe some Game Boy games or emulate some PSP here and there, it's not bad. But if you're looking for this to play PS2 games or GameCube games at full res or multi resolutions, it's not for that. This device is for a fantastic streaming experience, and it does that very well. Its battery lasts for frickin' ever. They did a great job on the battery management. Just give us some different colors. This thing is ugly. Very ugly. This is the iNode 2, and this is the granddaddy of all Android-based handheld devices. This thing has a 6-inch 1080p touchscreen, in addition to an 8000 milliamp hour battery, Hall joysticks, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and 65 watt quick charging, which none of the other devices in this entire lineup have. The battery size on this device is enormous. It also has a fan, incredibly large speakers that are front firing, so this is the best sounding device out of the entire group. It has fantastic analog sticks and triggers that just make this device feel like a console when you're playing it. Between the sound, the screen sharpness, and the battery, it just feels like it's a polished product running on Android, other than some other devices that don't make it feel like it's just for gaming and still feel kind of like a phone. The emulation power on this device is absolutely spectacular. It's got a fantastic chip in it, plenty of RAM at the lowest level, the $300 level, and that huge battery. So the emulation support on this device will play all the way up to the PSP, all of the GameCube, and all of the PlayStation 2 console very well, in addition to upscaling and tons of other support. If you'd like to see more, check the video down in the description. The Android gaming, on the other hand, has support and an overlay for mapping the buttons. So playing things like Genshin Impact or other games or maybe emulators that need mapped to the buttons can be done. It's got plenty of power to run Diablo Immortal and just is a treat to play on. In addition, with this screen size and battery, game streaming is phenomenal on this device and will be its kind of leg into the future if you're deciding on this one, because having that huge battery in addition to having the game streaming just means you're going to have this device and play it for longer with new titles that come out. And this brings us to our extras category. These are two different devices that I think are great, also running on Android, and are under $100 if you're looking for a cheaper device. The first one is a vertical style handheld, and it is the Anbernic RG353V. It has joysticks, D-pad, and all the other good stuff, in addition to running Android and Linux dual booted. So if you want to run this on Android and maybe run some 8-bit style games from Android, you can actually do that. Netflix has a few they've done with Stranger Things that actually look fantastic on this device. In addition to playing stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, stuff like that on this weird little size screen, and all the D-pad controls actually works fantastic. It doesn't have screen mapping software, but for under $100, it does get some gaming done. Now for last, the Retroid Pocket 2S. This is one of my favorite small portable Android gaming devices. It has Hall effect sticks, triggers, front firing speakers, and a tiny little screen. It is fantastic for playing Game Boy Advance games, 8-bit games from the Android store, and if you really want to, you can play Wind Waker on here in addition to game streaming. So it also has the on-screen key mapping, so this really is the Retroid Pocket package, just even smaller. I think this is a fantastic little device that feels great when you play it, and just is an interesting device overall that I think if you're playing lower end games and just want something small, this is the way to go. Now, each one of these devices in their own right are fantastic. I think if you end up with any of these devices for even cheaper for what they're listed as, you'd be making a great decision. And hopefully all the information provided above, which was kind of a lot, will help you make a purchasing decision. But if you'd like to dive just a little bit further and figure out that every little detail before you make that purchase decision, check one of these videos out, because if you don't like Android, you can always go with a Steam Deck or a handheld PC device, but they will cost more. Or if you're looking for just more details on some of the other devices, check out this playlist, because I'm going to put all these videos that I have linked down in the description into a playlist if you want to dig deeper into each one of these devices, because we've already done that. None of these smell like pickles, but they possibly could. So stick around, give one of these a click, and if you liked this video and appreciated the time you spent here today, give it a like, because I'm sitting in my basement doing this on a Sunday for you guys. So talk to y'all later.